Shalom Aleichem Rabbotai. We are continuing in the second parak of Mishnah Trumot at the fourth Mishnah. Ein tormin mimin al she'eno mino. We can't take Trumah from one species onto a different species. This is a continuation of the theme so far in this parak of not taking Trumah from one item on a different item, like we discussed Lagabe Tuma, and now we're discussing about different species. In Taram, Ein Trumato Truma. If he separated a Truma from one thing to another, it doesn't work. Kol min chitim echad. But every kind of wheat is one thing. The Barton Nurse says some are red, some are white. We know there's winter wheat, there's summer wheat, there's different variations, but they're all considered one thing. Kol min te'enim grogrot dvela echad. Now te'enim, figs, and grogrot are dried figs, and devela are the figs that are dried and squished up into a big fig cake that we mentioned in the first mission of this parak, when half of it was tameh, half of it was tahor. These are all one thing. They're all figs, even though they've been processed differently. But Torah mizeh al zeh, and you can take truma from any kind of wheat, or barley would be similar, or on to another type, because it's the same thing. The Mishnah continues, and this is very critical. Kol makom sheyesh kohen, a place where you have a kohen standing by, ready to receive your truma. Maybe lav davka, but he lives in town. You can get it to him. Torah mina yafeh, you take from the best, ripest produce. V'kol makom she'ein kohen, and when there's no kohen readily available, Torah mina mitkayim, you take not necessarily from the plump, juicy, ripe one, but from what's going to last longer, even if it's going to ripen next week, because you might not have a kohen to give it to until next week, and you don't want to give him a rotten tomato, you want to give him a fresh one. Rabbi Yehuda omer, la'ola mutor mina yafeh. Rabbi Yehuda says it doesn't matter how long it lasts, you always take from the best, ripest, biggest, plumpest produce for your truma. Mishnah continues this theme and gives us a case of this dispute between Rabbi Yehuda and the sages about what ideally you want to select to give to the Kohen as Truma. Mishnah Tormin Batzel Koton Shalem. It's better to give a small onion, which is whole, V'lo Chatzi Batzel Gadol, not half of a big plump onion. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Loki. Rabbi Yehuda says that's not so. Elechatzi botzel gadol. Better to give him half of a nice big plump onion rather than a whole one that's a small one. Now, obviously, a whole onion, which is sholem, it's going to last a lot longer because once you cut it, it starts to dry out and be not so gishmak. Chen Haya Rabbi Yehuda Omer. So too, Rabbi Yehuda says Tormin bitzolim mipnei medina ala kufrim. You can designate as truma onions of the city onto onions of the villages of Allah mina kufrim al bnei medina, but not from vice versa, not from the village onions to exempt city onions. Mipnei shu machol politikim. Now this is really interesting because it's political onions. What he means is the onions in the villagers were smaller, but would last longer. So again, according to the sages, if there's no Kohen ready now, that would be ideal, because it lasts longer to give enough to a Kohen. But according to Yehuda, these big plump onions that are given to the politikim, these are the more chashuv onions, and they should be designated as truma. Now, obviously, this word sounds familiar. Politikin is a Greek word, and it's those who live in the poltrin. Poltrin is a palace. So the people up in the palace, those are the politikin. And obviously those are the political class who think they're above everyone else. And, I'm not going to elaborate here, but obviously if you have one group of people living up in a palace eating juicy, plump onions, these people really don't understand the hardships of the normal people down below, not in the palace, who are eating the small onions and yet paying a lot of money for them due to the policies of the politikim up in the palaces. So what Rabbi Yehuda is hinting at is always better to separate a gishmaka onion or a gishmaka good, ripe, plump produce, because that's what the Torah requires, rather than smaller produce, even if it has other advantages. Shkoyach Rabosai.